Many of you are in relationships now that have worn on for years, and you've been unhappy for many, many years. Things just didn't start right. The initial lust wore off pretty quick, but your devotion and your faithfulness and loyalty held you in to the relationship, held you in, and you stayed in amongst the abuse, the frustration, the alcohol, drugs, and other substances possibly, the affairs, all the letdowns. You stayed in. You stayed in. It was on you, nobody else but you. With that said, you learnt that there are certain things that you can let go and somehow manage, but you've become medicated. You're now medicated to cope with the headaches and migraines, the disappointments, the depression, the anxiety, and you think this is you. You're putting this all down to yourself, but it's not you. It never was you. You tried to resolve, you tried to find a fair answer to all of this, and you were not in any means whatsoever appreciated or accommodated. With this said, the consequences of you putting up with the unresolved have played over the years a massive part in the deterioration of your health, mental health, physical health, because mental health always leads to a deterioration in physical health as well, particularly if you turn to drugs and chemicals and chemistry and substances, nicotine possibly, alcohol. The ones that society accepts are often the worst, because we convince ourselves that they're okay when they're not. This wears away at your health, and it wears away at your health pretty quick, but we condition ourselves to try and be able to cope with the impacts of these substances on our body, and the impacts are huge. Organ failure, mind disintegration, brain abuse, accidents that cause other physical damages. All these things come out of, in a lot of cases, the sadness of relationships. Now, I can say this because I was married to a woman who was a covert female narcissist, or sinner, or somebody that was dysfunctional, narcissist, dysfunctional, sinner. It all has the same impact. And we organised to go for a walk. Everything appeared to be going fine. We organised to go for a walk, of which I turned up for. I had no mobile phone. I was going to get a mobile phone that day. She didn't turn up for the walk. I had no way of communicating with her, and I didn't know where she was. This caused a terrible amount of anxiety, because when somebody doesn't turn up, particularly a partner, to something that you have arranged and are going to do, then that signals to me that something's wrong. Now, to cut a long story short, I found my way home, and I found this person, supposed to be my wife. This is how they get you to have an accident and all this other stuff, or to mentally fry your brain. I asked, where she was and why she didn't turn up. And she said, I went to buy a dress. Well, that's completely irrelevant to your commitment. It was completely irrelevant to the commitment that we made to go for a walk. She had lost, to me, at that point, I wasn't real savvy on specific personality disorder and traits and sinfulness towards relationship, but I knew at this point, something is seriously wrong. Cut a long story short, I went kiteboarding that afternoon and had a very serious life-changing accident as a consequence of musing on why this woman never turned up, why she had totally disrespected the arrangements that we've made, and myself. And to cut a long story short, looking back over it now, the woman was selfish, self-centered, had an agenda that really wasn't relative to a relationship, it was relative to herself. This all came out later, which it does. And it was something that you couldn't recognize without prior experience. And I'd had experience with women for years and years before this one. And so I ended up realizing that I've got somebody here that's not quite right. I'm married into it. There was a bit of a panic there. And it wasn't long after that that the relationship collapsed on the premise of covert emotional incest. Her and her son were intimately involved emotionally. And that's another story. I've got videos on covert emotional incest. But you've got to be very careful how these people impact your mental health, what that can do to you physically by way of health conditions and accidents. A lot of accidents happen because people are stressed and worn out by dysfunctional relationships. And you need to recognize the problem, have the courage to try and fix it, confront the issue before, well, the issue's already confronted you at this point, it's exposed itself. Confront the issue, and if things get worse, you know what the answer is, and that is you have to get out. Because that is the real person. It's not just happenstance. This is the real person in action, doing what they do. That's why they've probably lost marriages before this. They're just doing what they do at your expense, at the expense of your health, mental and physical. You need to go no contact. Hopefully there's no children involved. And if there is, keep that to a minimum. Break up. You say, well, that's not the Christian thing to do. It sure is. If you're being abused, break up, get out, and never, ever, ever go back.